Welcome back to Beautifully Broken Crafts, Hauls, and More. This is Crystal, and today I have 3 Kirkland inspired DIYs for you guys. So the first one is going to be the inspiration from that, I think it said Hello Autumn round plaque. So I used a Dollar Tree pizza pan, and the first thing I did was put Mod Podge on it because sometimes paint does not like to stick directly to metal. So I just put the Mod Podge all over that, and I let it dry. Once it's dry, I put a coat of the Waverly white chalk paint. Oh, look, you can see my daughter's leg in the background in the kitchen. And her boyfriend's. Anyhow, white Waverly chalk paint. I had to do 2 coats of this, so I did it in the center of the pizza pan and all along the edges. And then I used my heat gun or heat tool to dry that. That way it dried faster. And then I did a second coat. So once that was all dry, I took my antique Waverly wax and I just went around the edges of that pizza pan, and then I took a wet paper towel and wiped some of it off because I didn't want it that dark. And then I distressed the center of that pizza pan a little bit as well. And then I went back over it with Mod Podge because I knew I was going to put some type of vinyl down on this. And sometimes when you do that, the transfer tape will lift up the paint. So they recommend to put Mod Podge down first. And as you see here, this is going to get changed. The autumn vibes is going to stay in the center, but the branches and the pumpkins around it, I end up going over because I just did not like it. It looked more Halloween-y to me than autumn. So there you see, I had repainted it all white. And so I found these gold puff stickers I had also from the Dollar Tree, and I painted them black. And this is still all in the same day. I just started getting cold, so I went up and grabbed that hoodie to put on. And I'm like, well, I don't feel like this is enough. So then I ran back and decided, okay, I'm going to paint more of these black so I can put those on here too. So I did that, and once those were dry, you see me, see me arranging those around the half of that pizza pan I wanted them on. Then I took that antique wax again just to go back over the stark white to make it look distressed. And I even went over the flowers. And I believe this time I'm using a baby wipe instead of a wet paper towel, because the paper towel just kept crumbling in my hand. And then I used some white wax from Waverly also and went over that some, and also distressed those flowers just to dull it down a little bit. Well, the kids just came in from being out to dinner, and they're talking to me. Oh, and then I just tried my daughter's pumpkin spice, like frappe from Dunkin' Donuts. It was good. It was alright. It was sweet. Oh, and there's the finished product. I did miss out on putting in that beat it hanger. Like, I didn't record that part. My bad. Okay, on to DIY number 2. This is going to be, you'll see it. So I took this I think I used all Dollar Tree products minus vinyl from my Cricut machine. Anyways, took this Dollar Tree frame and took out the back of it, which, I mean, it was cuter by itself, but I needed something this size for this project that I'm making. And then I just sanded down whatever paper that was still stuck in there after I popped the back of that picture out. And then I sand down the back, well, what is now going to be the back of this picture. We're using the front of it as the back and the back of it as the front. I pulled off the label because I'm going to paint this in the Waverly white chalk paint. I just sanded off the gooiness that was left from that sticker a little bit. Oh yeah, that bottle I first opened was the white wax. Wasn't paying attention. Thankfully, I didn't dip my brush in it first. So I had to run back to my craft stash and grab the white paint. So here I am painting that backside of that picture all in the Waverly white chalk paint. While that's drying, I set it aside and use the Waverly truffle chalk paint for the frame. And I painted the outside, the inside, and the edges as well. And then I did a second coat on there because you could still see the dark backgrounds pretty much. But that second coat did the trick, which I don't really even know why I did it so well. Because there's a piece of faux leather that's going to go over this. So as you can see, I'm measuring it out off to the side there. I just drew, I think I measured it to be, I did it in centimeters by accident. So I think I measured it to be 14 3/4 centimeters. And then that with grace and gratitude I had printed out on my Cricut machine. So it's just some vinyl. And I used a squeegee to squeegee that down from the transfer tape. I save all my transfer tape so you can't stick anything to it anymore. Now that piece of backing is dry with the white paint, so I take my ruler and a pencil and I just start drawing thin lines to make it look like shiplap. I use my finger to smear that letter around a little bit to make it look distressed, and then I cover it in Mod Podge so it doesn't smear anymore if somebody picks it up and touches it. While that was drying, I dug out my copper paint marker, or like rose gold, and I took 4 push pins that were gold and I just painted the heads of those, set that aside, and now I'm going to glue down that faux leather to the top of this with just the hot glue gun. So once I eyeballed it and got it centered, I just went around, as you guys seen there, with the hot glue on the corners, and then I take those little push pins. I had to go grab the wire cutter pliers to get the little stems off because it wouldn't go through. And then I just hot glued them onto the faux leather and then back down onto the board. And I did that in all 4 corners. And there I'm just using my cricut tool to scrape off a little bit of excess hot glue that seeped out from under that push pin. And then I just touched up the spots on those push pins that needed recovered. And then I'm taking this faux wood grain contact paper I got from Dollar Tree to cover the back. That way nobody knows that picture is on that back side of that, so it'll look more like a finished product. So I had just traced out that board and trimmed that contact paper down to size, and then I use my little squeegee tool to smooth it out on the back of there. And then you see me trimming off any excess along the edges. And then I'll use my sandpaper as well just to sand it down to make sure it's all gone. And then I glue this back into the frame the way it was previously. And you'll see the finished product at the end of this video of these last 2. So this is DIY number 3. And that sign I'm prying apart is from Walmart. It was originally $4, but I believe I got it on clearance for like $1 at best. So I just the back, that insert was very difficult to push out, but I did it. But when I did crack the frame a little bit, so I just hot glued it back together. And then you see me taking that truffle Waverly Chalk paint again. It's like a brown, like almost like a chocolate brown color. And I'm doing that whole frame again, in, you know, the inside, the trim, the outside, and all that stuff. That way it's no longer pink. And then while that's drying, I flipped over that sign and just had to use my heat tool gun. Is that how you say that? Whatever. The heat gun to get those labels off of there, because it was super sticky. And then this thing. Oh, that little embellishment of yay. That was on there good. It took me a good 30 minutes to get all of that off of there, because after I scraped that off, you see me using that little screwdriver to get the excess wood particles off. I had to keep heating it up just to get the glue to loosen. But eventually I got it as flat as it could be with that screwdriver, and then I also sanded it down. Then I take the contact paper again, and I'm going to cover the back of this. Watch what I do here, though. After I cut all this out, first I stick it to the side that I'm going to be using. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, you are so, ugh, you're an idiot. So I had to take it off. Thankfully, didn't get that stuck. And put it on the correct side, which was that ugly orange side. And I just trimmed off the excess on the sides and also sanded off the excess on the sides. And then I run back to my craft stash and find I think it's 2 booklets of cardstock I have. And I'm just flipping through to decide which one I want. And I settled on this pink and yellow and white plaid. Traced out that insert of that frame. And then cut it down the size. And I just use an Elmer's glue stick to glue this piece of cardstock to that insert. And it works just fine. And I just use my squeegee to spread it, to smooth it out, and then the sandpaper on the edges. I will tell you now, I prefer using the glue sticks when I'm doing stuff like this versus the Mod Podge, because Mod Podge tends to wrinkle up a lot, but it all depends on what you're trying to glue onto what. So I just glued that insert back into the frame. It was giving me a hard time. Did not want to go back in right away. But once I got it in there, I'm going to replace the hanger that I had originally taken off the back of this. That way I have the option to hang this up or just set it on a shelf. Then I take this pumpkin that was off of one of the one of the things I had left from last year's haul of Dollar Tree stuff. So it was like a pumpkin, like 3 pumpkins and 3 footballs or something like that. And I didn't even bother to sand or paint the orange side of this pumpkin, because that part's going to be glued on to that picture that we just did. So on my Cricut, I had printed out on some stencil vinyl the words "Hello Pumpkin." I'm giving this one quick coat of the truffle Waverly Chalk paint, and then I go ahead and transfer those letters or those words onto that pumpkin. And then I'm going to paint over them. Oh, there's my kids again in the background. Paint over them with the Waverly white chalk paint. And I did leave the edge of the pumpkin. Like, I left a little bit of the brown showing. You'll see the finished product. I did have to do 2 coats of the Waverly white chalk paint for it to be covered enough to my liking. Oh, the dog just went past. I don't know if you guys caught that. So I had to go get that darn heat gun again. And there I am doing the second coat. And before that second coat fully dries, I use my little Cricut tool to peel off that vinyl. That way you'll be able to see the phrase "Hello Pumpkin." You know, while I'm editing this and watching this back, I make some ridiculous faces while I'm doing these projects, people. I don't know if anybody's paid attention to that or you guys are just strictly watching me do the project, but me, I'm like, look, what are you doing with your face, girl? But I think we all do that and don't realize it. This was actually my first time using the stencil vinyl, and it wasn't that bad. I'm surprised. I did sand this down just a little bit to give it a more distressed look, and I put a thin layer of Mod Podge over top of it just to seal all that paint in. And then I take some twine also from the Dollar Tree, and I decide to make, first I was trying to do a shoelace bow, and I said forget that, and I just somehow work together a finger bow. I've never done one before to that day that I made this, but it came out perfectly fine. I was proud of myself for it. I take that pumpkin, glue it to the center of that picture frame. I do a little bit of dry brushing on the edges of the frame with some Waverly white chalk paint. And then there's the Grace Plus Gratitude, originally $39.99 at Kirklands, and that's my product there with the purple. And this one there says Hello Fall for $34.99, and I made mine say Hello Pumpkin. In total for this, I might have paid $3, and yeah, let me know what you guys think.